Clark Gable names the gay actors of old Hollywood. Gary Cooper, dated in secret, and the last revelation will leave you speechless. Coming from Hollywood's most masculine icon himself. 1948, Los Angeles. Two titans of the silver screen, Clark Gable and Gary Cooper, stride confidently down Sunset Boulevard, tailored suits catching the golden California light. Behind those million-dollar smiles and rugged personas that dominated box offices lay a web of shocking secrets. Confidences shared between legends when cameras stopped rolling. What if the king of Hollywood himself possessed the most explosive list of names in Tinseltown history? Join us as we pull back the velvet curtain on a Hollywood that existed far from the carefully constructed publicity stills and sanitized studio biographies. William Clark Gable entered the world on February 1st, 1901, in the dusty, unremarkable town of Cadiz, Ohio, a humble beginning that gave no hint of the towering legacy he would one day forge. Tragedy marked his earliest days when his mother died before he could form memories of her, leaving young Clark to be raised by his father and later a stepmother who recognized something extraordinary in the boy's demeanor and encouraged his growing fascination with literature and storytelling. The journey from small-town obscurity to Hollywood royalty was neither direct nor glamorous. Gable's hands knew hard labor long before they knew applause, as he toiled in oil fields and peddled ties to make ends meet. His ruggedly handsome features, those famous ears, penetrating eyes, and that devastating smile, might have been crafted by central casting itself, but Gable's true education came through the gritty determination of traveling theater troupes, where he learned his craft one grueling performance at a time. When Hollywood finally beckoned in the waning days of silent films, few could have predicted the meteoric rise that awaited him at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. The studio system quickly recognized what America would soon discover. Clark Gable possessed that rare, magnetic screen presence that commanded attention and ignited imagination. Films like Red Dust in 1932, Mutiny on the Bounty in 1935, and San Francisco, 1936, cemented his position as Hollywood's most reliable box office draw, a man whose name is above the marquee guaranteed lines around the block. But it was Frank Capra's revolutionary romantic comedy, It Happened One Night in 1934, that elevated Gable from mere star to cultural phenomenon. His portrayal of Peter Warren, the streetwise reporter with a heart beneath his cynical exterior, captivated audiences and critics alike. The film swept the Academy Awards, delivering Gable his only Oscar and redefining the blueprint for the American romantic leading man. Reportedly, sales of men's undershirts plummeted nationwide after Gable appeared bare-chested in one pivotal scene. Such was the jaw-dropping influence he wielded over American culture. Yet even this career-defining triumph paled in comparison to what awaited him in 1939. Cast as a sardonic, seductive Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind, Gable delivered what would become his most indelible performance in the highest-grossing film of its era. His final line to Vivien Leigh's Scarlett O'Hara, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn," shattered censorship taboos and entered the cultural lexicon, where it remains among the most quoted movie lines in history. When America entered World War II, Gable demonstrated that his heroism extended beyond the soundstage. Following the devastating loss of his beloved wife, Carol Lombard, in a plane crash while she was selling war bonds, a grief-stricken Gable enlisted in the United States Army Air Forces. Despite being well into his 40s, he flew combat missions over Europe, earning a distinguished Flying Cross and showing a courage that matched his larger-than-life screen persona. Studio executives reportedly begged President Roosevelt to keep their most valuable star out of combat, fearing the catastrophic financial implications should he be killed in action. Roosevelt allegedly replied that losing one actor, even one as profitable as Gable, was worth the morale boost his service provided to millions of Americans. The post-war years brought a gradual transformation in Gable's career and personal life. Though his star never dimmed entirely, the phenomenal heights of his pre-war fame proved difficult to recapture. Films like Mogambo with Ava Gardner and Grace Kelly and Run Silent, Run Deep with Burt Lancaster showcased a more mature Gable, one whose weathered features and deepened voice reflected both the passage of time and the emotional battles fought off-screen. His final performance in The Misfits, written by Arthur Miller and co-starring Marilyn Monroe and Montgomery Clift, stands as a hauntingly appropriate farewell. Playing an aging cowboy grappling with a changing world and his own mortality, Gable delivered perhaps his most vulnerable and nuanced performance. The heartbreaking irony that this physical role would contribute to the massive heart attack that claimed his life on November 16, 1960, just days after filming concluded, adds a layer of tragic poetry to his legendary career. The film was released posthumously, with audiences watching their beloved king of Hollywood in what they now knew was his final bow, while Gable's professional accomplishments filled column inches and fan magazines. His turbulent, romantic life generated equally voracious public interest. His reputation as a womanizer was legendary, his masculine appeal seemingly irresistible to leading ladies both on and off the screen. Gable's personal odyssey through 5 marriages revealed a complex man whose search for lasting connection often competed with the relentless demands of stardom. His first marriage, to Josephine Dillon in 1924, established a pattern that would repeat throughout his life. Relationships marked by dramatic power, imbalances, and shifting dynamics. Dillon, 17 years his senior, was not merely his wife but his acting coach and career architect. She invested her time, money, and expertise in transforming the rough-edged young man into a polished performer. When his star began to rise, the marriage crumbled, ending in divorce by 1930. Insiders whispered that Gable's gratitude had limits, particularly when ambition called him toward newer, more advantageous connections. Marriage to wealthy socialite Maria Langham followed almost immediately, giving Gable entree to social circles that would have been unimaginable during his hardscrabble youth. This union, too, dissolved as his fame accelerated, unable to withstand the countless temptations that Hollywood placed in his path. Perhaps the most scandalous chapter in Gable's romantic history unfolded during the filming of The Call of the Wild in 1935, when he allegedly impregnated his co-star, the devoutly Catholic Loretta Young. In an era when such indiscretions could destroy careers, Young went to extraordinary lengths to protect both their reputations. She retreated from public view, gave birth in secret, and later adopted her own biological daughter. This stunning deception, maintained for decades, reveals the suffocating constraints of the studio system and the ruthless measures taken to preserve carefully constructed public images. The great love of Gable's life arrived in the form of actress Carole Lombard, whose vibrant spirit and earthy humor pierced the armor he had built around himself. Their 1939 marriage brought a period of genuine happiness and stability, with Lombard's vivacious nature complementing Gable's more reserved temperament. Industry insiders claimed they had never seen the typically guarded star so completely besotted. When Lombard perished in a 1942 plane crash while returning from a war bond tour, Gable was devastated beyond consolation. His immediate enlistment in the military was viewed by many as a form of escape from unbearable grief, perhaps even a subconscious death wish. The remaining years of Gable's life included 2 more marriages, to Lady Sylvia Ashley in 1949, a union that lasted barely 3 years, and finally to Kay Williams in 1955. Williams was pregnant with Gable's son when the actor died, a bittersweet epilogue to his complicated romantic legacy. John Clark Gable would be born 4 months after his father's death, never knowing the legendary figure who had captivated generations of moviegoers. Yet beneath the carefully crafted public narrative of Clark Gable's life, the professional triumphs, the romantic entanglements with women, the all-American masculinity, lay another dimension, one shrouded in Hollywood's most closely guarded secrets. It was in this shadow realm of whispers and confidences that Gable allegedly revealed a list of names that would have shattered the very foundation of Hollywood's mythology had they ever reached the public. All those battles carved a blacklist into his memory. Late in life, in a moment of rare candor fueled by whiskey and nostalgia, Clark Gable opened a window into Hollywood's most fiercely protected secret. The names of prominent actors his close friend Gary Cooper had reportedly dated during their reign as kings of the silver screen. Cesar Romero. In the dimly lit corner of Chasen's restaurant in Beverly Hills, Gable allegedly leaned across a table scattered with emptied Scotch glasses and named Cesar Romero as Cooper's most passionate liaison. Hollywood's so-called Latin from Manhattan maintained an impeccable public image, while studio fixers worked overtime to conceal his private affairs. Romero, who would later achieve renewed fame as the Joker in the Batman television series, was known in inner circles for hosting lavish, carefully curated parties where certain guests arrived through private entrances and left before dawn. Coop told me once that Romero had a collection of their correspondence that would make Jack Warner have a stroke. Gable reportedly confided to director Raoul Walsh during a hunting trip in 1957, while Romero escorted starlets to premieres and maintained his bachelor persona. His true affections apparently lay elsewhere, and Cooper wasn't the only leading man to fall under his sophisticated spell. Randolph Scott. On a secluded beach house in Malibu, sometime in the summer of 1945, Gary Cooper and Randolph Scott allegedly spent 3 uninterrupted weeks together under the pretense of preparing for potential projects, a creative retreat that studio publicists carefully spun as 2 rugged outdoorsmen bonding over hunting stories and script revisions. The Virginia-born Scott, whose chiseled features and southern charm made him a Western film staple, maintained a complex facade, including a 7-year marriage to heiress Marion DuPont that many insiders claimed was arranged purely for appearances. Randy and Coop spoke in code on set, Gable purportedly revealed to choreographer Hermes Pan at Frank Sinatra's Palm Springs compound. They could have a full conversation about their weekend while surrounded by crew, and nobody caught on. The friendship between Cooper and Scott continued publicly for decades, their genuine chemistry evident in rare photographs, while the true nature of their bond remained one of Hollywood's most fiercely protected secrets, guarded as zealously as box office figures. Tyrone Power. When filming stalled on a troubled production in 1941, Tyrone Power and Gary Cooper were dispatched by nervous executives on a goodwill tour to Mexico City, an elaborate cover for removing 2 valuable assets from a deteriorating set, but one that allegedly provided the perfect cover for a week-long romantic escape. Studio documentation shows both men occupying separate hotel suites at the luxurious Hotel Reforma, yet staff later gossiped about rooms that went suspiciously unused, while security ensured absolute privacy for the American film stars. Ty could charm the rattles off a snake, Gable supposedly told columnist Hedda Hopper after Power's premature death in 1958. Even Coop, who played it closer to the vest than anyone I knew, couldn't resist when Power decided to turn on that megawatt smile. Power's legendary appeal crossed all boundaries of gender and social standing. The man whose face launched 1,000 matinee ticket sales harbored desires that would have shocked the Bobby Soxers, who plastered his image across their bedroom walls. Anthony Perkins. During production of a now-forgotten Western in 1957, Cooper took a special interest in a young, intense character actor named Anthony Perkins, inviting him to private dinners and offering career guidance that industry veterans noted seemed surprisingly generous from the usually reserved Cooper. Perkins, nearly 30 years Cooper's junior, and years away from his career-defining role in Psycho, was known for a distinctive nervous energy and intellectual approach to acting that stood in stark contrast to Cooper's naturalistic style. Tony was obsessed with authenticity in everything. Gable purportedly commented to director John Huston. Cooper said he'd never met anyone so determined to understand every aspect of a character or a relationship. The mentorship raised few eyebrows at the time, but Gable's later insinuations cast their connection in a different light, suggesting that behind closed doors, the aging icon and the rising method actor shared more than just professional advice. Montgomery Clift. After Montgomery Clift's devastating 1956 car accident left his perfect face permanently altered, Cooper reportedly made private arrangements to visit the reclusive star during his long recovery, short, unannounced visits that occurred when Clift's regular visitors had departed. These clandestine meetings between Hollywood's strong, silent archetype and its most sensitive, vulnerable method actor were kept off official schedules, with Cooper slipping in through service entrances and leaving no trace of his compassionate vigils. Monty was the only one who ever got under Coop's skin emotionally, Gable allegedly confided to director George Cukor. The accident nearly broke him. He told me once he couldn't bear to see that beautiful face destroyed. The tenderness Cooper reportedly showed toward Clift revealed a depth of feeling that contradicted his stoic public persona, suggesting that beneath the carefully maintained facade of Hollywood's most quintessentially masculine star beat a heart capable of profound, private devotion. Cary Grant. At a secluded hunting lodge in Montana in 1952, Gary Cooper and Cary Grant allegedly spent a long weekend, officially described to the press as old friends, fishing and swapping war stories, though tellingly, no photographs of any caught fish ever materialized despite Cooper's renowned prowess as an outdoorsman. Grant, whose own rumored relationship with Randolph Scott had fueled decades of speculation, maintained a carefully cultivated image as a sophisticated ladies' man while navigating Hollywood's treacherous double standards. They had an understanding, Gable reportedly told director George Stevens over drinks. Everyone knew not to ask certain questions if they wanted to keep working in this town. The mutual respect between these two icons extended beyond their screen achievements to a shared experience of maintaining impossible public expectations while pursuing private happiness, a silent brotherhood forged in the peculiar crucible of classic Hollywood stardom. Ramon Novarro. During a rare industry event honoring pioneers of silent cinema in 1955, Cooper disappeared for several hours with former silent film star Ramon Novarro, ostensibly to reminisce about the old days, despite the fact that their careers had barely overlapped during the transition to sound. Novarro, whose star had fallen dramatically since his triumph in Ben-Hur, maintained connections to Hollywood's old guard even as newer generations forgot his groundbreaking contributions to film history. Ramon knew where all the bodies were buried, Gable purportedly remarked to screenwriter Nunnally Johnson. Coop said he was the institutional memory of a Hollywood that officially never existed. The friendship between Cooper and Novarro bridged eras of filmmaking and modes of existence, connecting the open secrets of silent Hollywood with the more rigidly controlled studio system that followed, revealing how patterns of concealment evolved alongside the industry itself. Laurence Olivier. When Cooper traveled to London for a film premiere in 1949, he extended his stay by 2 cryptic weeks, during which he was frequently spotted at private theater performances and intimate dinner parties hosted by none other than Laurence Olivier, then at the height of his Shakespearean fame. British theatrical circles, historically more accommodating of sexual fluidity than Hollywood's rigid public morality, provided a rare space where the American film star could briefly relax the exhausting vigilance required back home. Larry had an effect on Coop that transformed him, Gable allegedly told director William Wyler. He'd come back from England speaking differently, standing differently, like he'd briefly inhabited another life. The transatlantic connection between America's plain-spoken cowboy and Britain's greatest classical actor crossed boundaries of nationality, performance style, and public persona, suggesting that Cooper found, in Olivier's sophisticated world, a freedom unavailable in the mythic American West he personified on screen. Rock Hudson. In the early 1950s, Gary Cooper reportedly took a particular interest in the career development of a strikingly handsome contract player named Rock Hudson, arranging private screen tests and making calls to producers that helped elevate the young actor from bit parts to leading roles. Studio executives, notoriously protective of their established stars, raised eyebrows at Cooper's unusual advocacy, though none dared question the judgment of their most reliable box office draw. Rock was different after Coop took him under his wing, Gable supposedly remarked to actor William Holden, more confident, like he'd been initiated into some exclusive club none of us were supposed to acknowledge. The mentorship between established icon and rising star reflected a pattern of generational continuity, the passing of both professional knowledge and private understanding of how to navigate Hollywood's treacherous contradiction between public image and personal truth. James Dean. In the summer of 1955, just months before James Dean's fatal car crash, Gary Cooper attended a private screening of East of Eden and reportedly sought out the brooding young actor afterward, inviting him to his ranch for what was described as acting guidance, but which insiders suggested had more complex motivations. Dean, whose mercurial talent and ambiguous sexuality challenged Hollywood conventions, represented a new, more defiant generation that threatened to upend the careful compromises of Cooper's era. Jimmy rattled Coop in a way I'd never seen, Gable allegedly told director Nicholas Ray. He said the kid made him question every choice he'd ever made in his career and his life. Whether the rumored connection between screen legend and rebellious newcomer ever developed remains one of Hollywood's tantalizing what-ifs, cut short by Dean's tragic death at age 24, leaving Cooper to continue his carefully compartmentalized existence until his own passing 5 years later. When Clark Gable died on November 16, 1960, following complications from a heart attack after completing The Misfits, he took with him countless unwritten chapters of Hollywood history. The revelations he allegedly shared about Gary Cooper's secret relationships never reached the public during either man's lifetime. Cooper himself had passed away just months earlier on May 13, 1960, after a battle with cancer, his carefully maintained public image intact until the end. These whispered confidences, passed between Hollywood titans in private clubs, on remote hunting trips, and during late-night Scotch sessions, illuminate the profound gap between public mythology and private reality that defined the golden age of American cinema. The masculine icons who embodied American ideals of strength, independence, and heterosexual appeal on screen navigated a far more complex reality behind the scenes, What remains most striking is not the alleged relationships themselves, but the elaborate machinery of concealment that surrounded them. Studio fixers, cooperative journalists, arranged marriages, and an unspoken code among insiders who understood that certain truths remained unutterable, certain names unmentionable in the same breath. The Hollywood that created Clark Gable and Gary Cooper demanded impossible contradictions from its stars, authentic yet artificial, accessible yet untouchable, familiar yet extraordinary. Perhaps in sharing these secrets late in life, Gable sought not to damage reputations, but to acknowledge the human complexity behind the larger-than-life personas they had all been required to maintain. As we look back on this lost era of filmmaking, we're reminded that the most compelling dramas often unfolded when the camera stopped rolling. Stories of courage, compromise, fear, and forbidden connection that no screenplay could capture. The true legacy of stars like Gable and Cooper lies not just in their iconic performances, but in the resilience with which they navigated the shadow world that existed beyond the silver screen's dazzling light. If these revelations about Hollywood's golden age surprised you, you're not alone. The carefully constructed images of yesterday's stars continue to unravel as time passes, revealing the complex humanity behind the legends. Which of these rumored relationships shocked you most? Would today's audiences have embraced these icons regardless of their private lives? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from cinema's most glamorous and secretive era. Tomorrow, we'll reveal the starlets who knew these secrets and kept them faithfully for decades.